The United Kingdom's Crown Prosecution Service, essentially England's version of the Department of Justice, recently updated its guidelines for prosecutors to help judge whether to charge a person with domestic violence. Now, among the offenses include, quote, withholding money for transitioning and, quote, refusing to use their preferred name or pronoun. Yes, it is now considered domestic violence to not pay for your child's sterilization or mutilization, or to not pretend that your son is a daughter, for example. Will police go door to door to enforce this outrageous breach of parental rights? Joining me now from London to discuss this is Peter Mcilvenna. He's the co-founder of Hearts of Oak, a freedom of speech alliance, and he works in the office of the UK's House of Lords. Peter, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Joseph. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you. You've been on the program before to highlight how the UK is facing so many of the same issues that we experience here in the US. But this latest CPS guidance seems to take it even further. Tell us a bit more about it.
Yes, it's quite embarrassing coming on talking about this because it shows that we've hit peak insanity in the UK. And what we are seeing is the guidelines being updated, and this has been an ongoing debate within the so-called Conservative Party, certainly for the last couple of years, and they promised they would update the guidance and give parents protection, give teachers protection against some of the nonsense that's happening. But in the latest updates, which you've seen, and there are further updates specifically on the education side, there are zero protections. They said they're working on guidelines, but simply within everything they put down in the current legislation, that if you do not use the pronoun that a child decides that day, then you can be punished. And we have had a number of teachers lose their jobs, not only in the UK, but in Ireland as well, for simply using the wrong pronouns. In one case, a parent said, good morning, girls. And it was a class of girls, and one of them had decided they were a boy. And at that point, the teacher got disciplined for being so awful enough to use a pronoun which was not accepted by all the children.
Yeah, you know, this is interesting because in the States, when we hear the term domestic violence, something very specific comes to mind, I think, and it's spousal abuse. Very often, a husband toward his wife or a boyfriend toward his girlfriend is the most common context. And the police will come and intervene to protect the wife from the abusive husband, for example. Is this a case where phone calls will be made to report instances of domestic violence, and the police will go to a home to determine whether or not, in fact, a parent is refusing to use a preferred pronoun and make an arrest on that basis?
Well, they would have to. They would have to uphold the law. That's what the police are there for, to uphold the law passed in our legislative chambers in Parliament. So this is a massive encroachment on parental rights, but it is what is happening in what we call hate speech in the UK. And we have legislation going through which will clamp down on it even more. And now a word that is perceived as hateful is therefore hateful. It's all in the perception. It's all subjective. There's nothing written down that says these words are acceptable, these words aren't, and it is like 1984 newspeak. If what you say is perceived as offensive, or someone believes it may be perceived. So, Joseph, you may say something to me privately, and someone else may overhear that, and they may decide that someone somewhere at some time may be offended by that. And that is enough to report you for a hate offense, for hate speech. And that is all in the legislation. We have had 110,000 people actually on a register for hate incidents, which are terms that may lead to a crime, pre-crime. It is a very dangerous, slippery slope we find ourselves in.
Peter, we've only got about a minute left. Do you find or perceive broad public support for new laws like this in the UK?
No, the problem is people are afraid. The problem is, especially the trans lobby, are extremely vicious. You obviously see what Antifa do in the US. We don't have that level of violence, but there is intimidation, there is fear. No one wants to be branded a homophobe or a transphobe. And that shuts down the debate, one, but also two, it is using language which has never been used before, and people are confused. People hear all this and they are told they must fit in. We've just had the month of Pride, obviously. We're told we must fit in, we must accept, we must be good citizens. And being good citizens is not hurting someone, is not causing offense. And that means you do not want to be perceived as someone that has hate on someone else. And therefore, the term hate speech really silences the whole debate. So it is fear from the public, fear of being branded anything which they are not.
Peter Mcilvenna, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Joseph.